To be honest, I have been somewhat bemused by the very concept of a folding phone. They do look ridiculous after all, which is why after a week with the Tecno Phantom V Fold, I'm quite shocked to find I actually want to keep using it as my main phone. That isn't something I have ever had with any Android smartphone I've been testing before. It's not perfect by any means, and I do have my doubts about the long-term durability, but for now, this changes everything. And the camera system is superb too, which is not something I was expecting either. Now, Tecno is not a well-known brand to most Western audiences, but it is big in developing markets such as Africa, India, and South Asia. But perhaps that's about to change. I'm James Bruce, you're watching MakeUseOf.com reviews, and today we'll be taking a look at the Phantom V Fold. It's been my main smartphone now for a couple of weeks, so keep watching to find out how it performs and whether it's right for you. Although we don't yet have solid pricing information, it is expected to launch for around $1,000. So let's talk about that Fold first. Now, obviously, there are some durability concerns with a folding screen, and if you tried, it would be easy to break the device. Unlike the Samsung Z Fold, there's no cheese wedge shape, and it seems to be completely flat to me, with an innovative hinge system that allows it to protect that screen and yet still fold flush. It's quite a stiff mechanism, and it requires a fair bit of force to unfold, but you get used to it, and so far I haven't experienced any physical issues or delamination of the screen, that sort of thing. Once unfolded, you're presented with a glorious 7.85-inch AMOLED, almost square to 7 ratio screen, running at 2296 by 2000 pixels or 2K plus, and that's an adaptive 10 to 120 Hertz at around 380 pixels per inch. Suffice to say, it's gorgeous and vibrant, though I do find it a little hard to read in bright light. Something about the additional coating that it has, or that protective plastic layer, makes it a bit more reflective. Are there any screen artifacts by nature of being a flexible display? Not when looking straight on. Move to a 45-degree viewing angle and there is an obvious dark patch running the full length of the Fold, and while I haven't got another foldable phone to compare, I don't think this is unusual. I noticed this more if it was perhaps just sitting on the table, maybe watching a video, but if you have it propped up, holding it, and in front of you, as I say, there's no distortion at all when you're doing that. And I was honestly quite surprised by that. I was expecting to see something. The laminate layer that protects the screen, however, is very reflective, as I said, so usage in bright sunlight is quite tricky. But also, if you happen to catch any kind of reflection in the screen, you will notice a distortion in the reflection, but not on the display image itself, which can be a bit weird. You can also feel the hinged part of the display if you run your finger over it. In practical terms, it feels really strange to be bending a screen like that, especially when the screen stays on briefly as you close it, almost until it's shut. And I sort of wince seeing that fold. It feels wrong, and yet it works. I do still have some concerns over the long-term durability, and that's unfortunately not something I can test over the course of a week or so that I've had this. Tecno rates it to withstand 200,000 folds though, so if we conservatively said 20 times unfolding and folding a day, or let's call that 40 because each fold is 2, right? Then 200,000 divided by 40 per day, roughly 13 years. So maybe my fears are entirely unfounded. So what's it like to use that folding screen? My biggest surprise about having a foldable screen was how much better it made typing feel. It's effectively the same as turning a regular smartphone landscape mode to type with a wide keyboard. But anyone who's tried that will know that having a single line of text that you can actually see is pretty much impossible. But with the square format of a folding phone, it's actually viable. In terms of media watching, most of the time you'll get a bigger image on the unfolded screen. The only exception is if you're watching a cinema format movie, which is typically 21:9, the same as most flagship smartphones and the same as this. In that case, you're going to get massive letterboxing and no benefit from watching on the unfolded square screens. However, most YouTube videos, 16:9 content, or even older TV 4:3 formats will take much better advantage of that inner screen. For any kind of web browsing or document reading, it's superb. It's honestly a game changer. For gaming even, I tried Call of Duty and it utilized the full screen, and I'm pretty sure it gave me an enormous advantage by expanding my vertical field of view immensely. Admittedly, this was only the early levels that I was playing. I don't regularly play Call of Duty on mobile, I don't have an account, but I did play the multiplayer for an hour or so, and from the very first game I was getting 2, 3, 4 times the kills of the next highest player. It felt like cheating, it probably was, because I'm not that good. I think a lot of players just couldn't see me if I was up higher, whereas I could see both down below and the field they were approaching from. Still, screen support may vary by game, so if you have a favourite title, then it's worth checking first. It would be a shame if you couldn't take advantage of that additional real estate. Alright, so we've talked about the fold, but other than that, let's look at it when it's folded up. You've got a fingerprint sensor with a power button and volume rocker above it, and then those are on the lower panel of the two screens. USB-C charging also on the lower bottom panel, then just above the charging port is the bottom speaker grille. And to the right of that is the SIM tray, which holds up to 2 nano SIMs and is capable of 5G. On the top edge, the microphone sits on the lower panel, while above that is the other speaker grille. So when unfolded or folded, as long as you have the fold across the horizontal when you're holding it, you'll get stereo sound. On the rear, you'll find the circular camera island, small silver phantom branding, and the back panel is covered in a kind of fibrous textured material. I don't know what that is. I assume it's some kind of fiberglass or plastic, but it's surprisingly nice, somewhat warm to the touch compared to your usual bare metal. However, I actually have the case on here, which is included in the box, and that has a sort of carbon fiber look. The front or secondary screen is a curved 6.42 full HD plus 1080 by 2550 pixels, working out at 431 pixels per inch, and that too is an adaptive 10 to 120 Hz LTPO screen. This one is also, as expected, Gorilla Glass Victus specifically. Despite the glass being curved, the screen doesn't curve over the edge. There's a millimeter or two of bezels on both sides, on both the subscreen and the main unfolded screen, but nothing unusually large or unexpected. It looks great. In terms of size, I have here the included slimline case on, and while obviously it's not quite the thickness of a regular smartphone, it's not far off. But to be honest, I usually use a pretty chunky case for my iPhone, so it's not much thicker than that and doesn't bother me personally. But roughly 14.5mm thick, 160mm tall by 72mm wide. That then expands to 160 by 140mm when unfolded. It is quite slimline though, compared to phones that are wider. I don't think you'll have an issue getting this into your pockets or anything. That is the beauty of having it foldable. It's all powered by a Dimensity 9000 Plus chip, which is very performant, as we'll see later, and that's backed up by 12GB of RAM, and this model is 256GB of storage, though they will also have a 512GB model at launch. So, onto performance then. Performance is overall very good, with 3D Mark Wildlife giving a respectable 8226, better than 93% of all devices tested. And while the stress test suffered a little from thermal throttling, resulting in a lowest loop score, a few hundred less at 7,885, but overall 97% stability, which is superb. For comparison's sake, the Samsung Z Fold 4, which features a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, scores a little higher at roughly 9,600 on Wildlife. However, it has horrendous thermal throttling, resulting in a stability of only around 60%. Repeating the extreme version of the test got 2,582, which is still better than 70% of all devices that have taken that test. So the graphical performance of the Dimensity 9000 Plus chip is superb, and you won't have issues with a sluggish UI or gaming on this. Everything feels slick, browsing is fast, video playback is fine, all good. PC Mark gave it a very respectable Work 3.0 score of 16,175, while Storage 2.0 was 44,645, both of which, I'll tell you, are about 20 to 30% better than the Z Fold 4 or even the more recent Honor Fold VS, which we benchmarked last week, and also features the same Snapdragon chip as the Samsung does. So while the Dimensity 9000 Plus GPU is slightly less powerful, overall performance is significantly higher. Lastly, for those who want even more comparisons to do themselves, Geekbench gave 1262 single-core, 4008 multi-core, and 9052 GPU compute score, so do with that what you will. Okay, on to another surprising part of the Tecno Phantom V Fold, the camera system. It features 5 lenses no less, which they will shout very loudly about. They don't get too excited because 2 of those are of course selfie cameras. You have one on the front and on the inside screens. The main camera is up to 50 megapixels. It's a large f1/1.85 custom sensor, which Tecno calls a super night sensor, which, as the name suggests, does really well in low light. More on that in a bit. While you also have a 50 megapixel telephoto 2x optical zoom and a 13 megapixel ultra wide sensor. Now, the secondary telephoto and ultra wide are nothing remarkable in my opinion, but the main sensor is stunningly good. Far better in low light than even my iPhone 13 Pro Max, and that's really saying something. Now, this was true with both the video and photography, which you can see in the comparison videos now. This was in very low light with LED lights only in my Lego cabinet at night, so there was no natural light at all coming in, and the iPhone really struggled, while the Phantom V Fold was superb. I actually tried the 3 different video modes in this low light test. Standard, which was a little bit shaky, ultra stabilized, much better, and ultimate video enhancer mode, which I couldn't see much difference with, but anyway. All of them suffered a little bit from focus swimming in this contrived test, but in real life you'd likely be setting your focus object rather than just seeing what it does. Daytime outdoor videography and photos were also superb, with pin sharp, great contrast, less impressive than the difference between low light shooting compared to the iPhone, but certainly equivalent and no worse anyway. And that was all shot at the full 4K 60 FPS. So overall, I am really impressed with the camera system because the folding screen is a game changer, but without a great camera to back it up, it would not fulfill the daily needs of most people, certainly not myself. And thankfully it delivers. Now, one minor neat feature, but also worth mentioning if you post a lot to social media and that sort of thing, the folding nature of the screen means that you can take ultra high quality selfies using the main camera with the front screen as a preview screen, effectively relegating the actual selfie camera to video conferencing, or, well, no, even that you could, I guess, use the rear camera for, but it would be a little bit awkward. The camera app also includes some curious, easy templates for short, I guess, TikTok style videos. Quite fun, not my thing. Okay, now for some minor downsides or niggles that I want to talk about. Battery life. There are few disappointing aspects of the Phantom V Fold, but one is the battery, which sounds large at 5,000 milliamp hours, but in any smartphone, the screen is the single biggest drain on the battery. And if you unfold this, you've got a screen that's twice as large, but not necessarily a battery that's twice as large. So inevitably, the battery life does suffer. With heavy use of the camera, playing Call of Duty, running some tests, etc., the battery went from full to almost nothing before the end of the day. In real-world normal usage, it lasts just over a day, but definitely not 2. Now, this isn't bad for a folding phone by any means, just that coming from a Plus model iPhone, it's a bit less than I'd like. I've really fallen out the habit of having to charge daily, and it feels like with this, I'll probably have to do that again. Not a huge deal, I guess. Audio on the Phantom V Fold I also found to be a little bit meh. Passable for sure, and gets reasonably loud if you're watching full main screen, horizontal, so you get those stereo speakers. It doesn't sound bad by any means, but nor is it as good as, say, the Honor VS with its IMAX whatever certification it is. I wouldn't say the speakers are disappointing, they're just not as good as they might have been, and media playback is not the main selling point of this device. Lastly, there's the user interface. The UI is a custom version of Android 13 called iOS 13 Fold. I understand the need for a custom UI given the non-standard interface size and the additional features like 2 apps running side by side, but I just don't like iOS. I'm quite used to swiping left for Google Discover Feed, and you can't get that here. Instead, you have some abomination with useless cards like number of steps or countdown to Labor Day, whatever that is. The rest of the card options aren't exactly thrilling, so for me, this aspect of the UI is now useless, and it can't be replaced easily, not as far as I can tell anyway. You need to drop down to ADB, start killing apps. There's also a fair bit of bloatware installed with the phone, from system support apps to management utilities and RAM cleaners and a video player and WPS Office and some fitness thing, and all I really want is a standard suite of Google apps and the Play Store, which is there, but for instance, you need to go in and enable Hey Google Voice Assistant. Not now. It's not on by default, probably because they want you to use their voice assistant instead. So sure, eventually I can uninstall most of the bloatware, set it up as I like, and in truth, I'd probably hate the Samsung Fold UI just as much, if not more. So is the Tecno Phantom V Fold a game changer? For me, it certainly has been. Honestly, I've switched to this as my main phone. That's literally the highest praise I can give to any device. Despite some initial skepticism about the whole folding screen concept, the device's innovative hinge system and gorgeous 7.85-inch AMOLED almost square screen has won me over, even this most cynical of reviewers. The camera system, featuring 5 lenses, is especially impressive, with the main super night sensor offering incredible clarity in low light. The performance is also commendable, with the Dimensity 9000 Plus chip powering the device, which is more reliable and faster than the Snapdragon counterpart, better at general UI work and performance, and only slightly worse for graphics. However, the battery life is somewhat disappointing, and the UI might be frustrating for those looking for a more stock experience. But overall, the Tecno Phantom V Fold is an excellent device that's worth considering for anyone looking for a unique and actually innovative smartphone experience and doesn't mind perhaps taking a gamble on the long-term durability of the device. Anyway, please hit like if this review helped you to make up your mind about the Tecno Phantom V Fold, and consider subscribing for more reviews of the latest and greatest tech gadgets. Until next time, I'm James Bruce. You've been watching MakeUseOf.com Reviews.